with Liberation Day coming up. So this is the whole question with tariffs, right? Is that, yeah, it looks good on paper in terms of the tax take, but you're assuming that no behavior changes. It doesn't stop people consuming or using products into the US at the same rate that they were, when realistically what you're doing is you're increasing price to try and make US products more competitive internally versus internal. And therefore, you're going to have a revenue problem here because if people stop consuming US imports and buy domestic products only, you're going to have a shortfall. I'm getting ahead of time.
We're going to be talking deeper. But what you can see here is there was this euphoria about the businessman coming into the White House. And so you saw equity markets and confidence and sentiment hit. And then actually the reality of the situation is, wait a minute, all the goods that I buy, interesting how most of them come from overseas.
Yeah.
And so now those things
even by my nearest neighbours in Canada and Mexico.
Yeah. So that's going to be a problem. And we're seeing it now in retail sales.
Yeah.
The reading pointed to a slower growth in the manufacturing sector as demand eased, production stabilised, and destaffing continued as companies experienced the first operational shock of the new administration's tariff policies. Prices growth accelerated due to tariffs, causing new order placements, backlogs, supply delivery stoppages, and manufacturing inventory impacts was the message from the chair of the ISM. New orders fell the most since March of 2022, 48.6 versus 55.1. That is a meaningful fall.
That's a big difference.
Employment, 47.6 versus 50.3, also fell into contractory territory, and production slowed sharply, 50.7 versus 52.5. That's interesting. Now, put it all together, we come into what is we refer to as the Trump economic experiment. We called it here earlier when we've been talking about it later, and we want to basically explain what we've learned in certain interviews and announcements that are being made by the Trump administration. So I want to explain it this way. Howard Lutnick, he's the Secretary of Commerce. Now, he's got a goal. His goal is $1 trillion of new revenue through tariffs. So that's government money in. Elon Musk, working for Doge, he's got a $1 trillion in spending savings, i.e. that's, again, further money in. Now, their job is to try and balance the budget. Now, what Scott Bessent, who is the Secretary of Treasury, so he's like the Treasurer here in Australia, he is on a mission for deregulation and personal tax cuts. Okay, so what we've got here is money coming in through tariffs. We've got spending savings that's also money coming in. But if you're going to promise, and here's the big promise that they want to make income tax zero up to anyone who earns $150,000. Now, that is an enormous money out story, right? So if they want to collect new revenue somewhere else, and I want to go on this promise. Now, their idea here is simple, that everything's going to cost more in America by as much as 25% in some cases. And so if that is going to be the case, we need to give the consumer some of their money back, and through lower taxes. So they're trying this massive experiment in terms of getting the consumer still spending by basically giving them tax cuts, but bringing in savings and monetary value other way. It's still not quite addressing the enormous deficit they've got, incredible deficit they've got, but the deregulation also is about trying to increase productivity and grow the economy, which they hope that over time will also then start to address the enormous deficit they've got. So number one, balance the budget. Number two, try and, sort of tread this, it's almost like tightrope walking.
Worse than that.
Consumer confidence worsening. So they're trying to do it. And this is the problem. What's going to backfire here potentially, and we're seeing it already, is consumer confidence. Now, Bessent calls this the detox period, and it is true. They are going to have to go through a period of hardship, in potentially even recession. So it's about how much mettle they hold in terms of, are they going to toe the line and keep doing this for as long as they need to do it? Because it's going to take years. It's going to take a couple of years.
Yet they've got
midterms coming up in November of 2026. So it's definitely going to be challenging. Furthermore, what makes it more difficult is the world trade story. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so I think you need to also remember that the deficit is $4.7 trillion.
Yep.
So this is part of the part of parcel. Then you have the world trade story. So we are a couple of days away here in Australia from getting what the US is referring to as Liberation Day, when they learn all of this reciprocal tariff taxation system.
Mm-hmm.
No country will escape. We have heard that already. Australia is preparing up, particularly for things like beef exports, along with the pharmaceuticals that are playing out there. Then also whether or not the GST is seen as a reciprocal tax and requirements. But this dirty 15 keeps coming up, and we actually don't have enough information to really honestly tell you this is who it is, because it keeps flipping. The latest is that it's those countries with operational trade surpluses to the US. Doesn't matter how big that surplus is, as a percentage to the US, that will differ. That's what they're talking about. So Ireland is a great example. It's not exactly a country with a huge amount of trade surplus on a value figure, but in terms of percentages, it is. And it's on there. Austria, similar scenario. Small country, but it is technically having a surplus to the US. All of those are part of the 15, including South Korea, Japan are on there as well, Canada, Mexico. On that list, we technically aren't. But there has been rumors that it's the 15 nations that have the largest trade, not surplus, just trade with the US, which we do fall into. So this is why, from an Australian's perspective, it's such a very, very uncertain period. And then again, behavioral economics is what I'm going to come back to. We've already seen it with what's going on in the US itself with the ISM numbers that have perfectly illustrated the problem about where we sit.
Yep.
That already businesses are making decisions about what they have to do to offset the cost increases. You also then have nations that go, okay, we can't operate in the US. We can't keep selling to the US like we are because our goods are 25% more expensive, for example.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to look to other nations. And we saw that in 2017 and 20. We saw that in Australia when we had the tariffs put on us by China. We went to other nations. We went to India. We actually went to the US.
Yep.
The final thing to remember is this. The other thing about what's trying to happen at the top of this slide, there has been an incredible amount of work from some of the major US investment banks. The best one I saw was from Citigroup, and they worked out that on the back of the envelope calculation, the tariffs are going to have to be between 15 and 20% to get even close to achieving what they want to achieve. That alone will mean that nations will start moving. It also means that even if you are getting a tax-free scenario up to 150K, the products you're buying basically will still appear way too expensive to you, and you probably will decrease your spending anyway. So then again, the revenue collection is this theoretical idea where in reality it won't, and history tells us this. There's been many nations that have tried this. Argentina is a great example. They have been failed states for a reason. Tariffs do not work.